All right, this is Atlas's progress lifting the feet. So this video is from February 11th. So I have done a couple of sessions with him between now and the last video seen was in December. So he's had his feet messed with a little bit, but hadn't really videoed anything. So he's probably had a couple literally in the last few months. So last time I saw him was December, now it's February. So I built up his feet holding a little bit. So I'm just going to be counting and then I'll click and then feed him. So I'm probably counting to like 4 or 5 there. So I literally start off with 1 second. So I'm going to hold the foot up, count to 1, click, feed. Then count to 2, click, feed, and it build it up. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, click, and feed. So we're about up to 5 at this point, and I'm just going to kind of fast forward through a lot of this because you get the idea. I'm picking up his feet, but then you can kind of see it. And then I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side, same situation. So I'm gonna slide down and I'm gonna just press gently on his chestnut, and then 1, 2, 3, and about 3 seconds on that side. So this is from last winter, so I'm trying to remember like how many seconds I had on each foot. Usually they're about the same. And he's trying to offer me the other foot there. That's cute. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's not really doing anything. So I'm just going to pause. If he's just kind of moving around, and pause and then ask again. And then 1, 2, 3. He's not really doing a whole lot better that time. So I'm just going to pause again. I'm just like, no clicking, no food. Just kind of pause and ask again for a good behavior. And then I'm going to, make the criteria easier. So that was better. He picked it up and then it was just 1 second. Like I didn't even give him time to kind of start shaking it around before I clicked and fed. And that was slightly longer, about 2 seconds. I clicked and fed. So I'm dropping the criteria because he was struggling with holding it and being like, yep, I want you to hold still, 1, 2, and there we go. That much better. So he was struggling to hold it for the 3 or 4 seconds. So I'm just going to lower that criteria a bit, be like, okay, can you go back to 1? Can you go back to 2? He's still offering that left front, 1, 2, 3. Very good. So now that I've dropped the criteria, he's like, okay, I can do this. It's not a big deal. So if you were up to a higher number like 10, maybe just drop it in half to 5. But since he was at 4 or 5, I just went back to 1. So this is the 28th. So it's very sporadic with Atlas. But I'm just going to do the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And that was actually quite good. He got a little tense toward the end. You could see him lifting up his neck. So I don't remember if he's had a session in between these. He might have. He should have if I'm doing 10 at this point. This is quite good. And he's getting a little bit, like right there, he's moving a lot and he's getting a little tense. So I should probably have let go at this point and just given him a pause and then a restart instead of trying to hold it because he needs to go back a step. But I was just kind of trying to hold him through it, which doesn't really work for him. He's just like, I'm not too comfortable with that. So I'm just going to be like, no, we're going to pause. I'm not going to give you a treat. That's not the behavior I'm looking for. And then I'll go back in there and ask again. And so I should have lowered the criteria and clicked right here because he's being good right here. And then I took too much and then he couldn't deal with it. And then I had to pause again. So I should have clicked him earlier. That was my mistake, but then you guys can kind of learn from this and see what not to do. Not perfect. But just have him, he's still doing a nice lift up. That was much better. That's what I should have done in the first like 3 times that I just did this. So I'm just going to ask again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That was really good. See, I should have clicked up there. And then I waited too long and he's still kind of moving his foot and now I'm rewarding him for that. So I should have clicked like 2 seconds earlier when he wasn't shaking his foot around. So hold it up again. So I should click now. Okay, moments passed. So I should not have fed this one either because then he thinks that shaking his foot around is what I want. So I just kind of maneuvered him a little bit closer to the camera here. I just cut that out. So I'm just going to work on his back feet a little bit. So I'm not picking up his back feet. I'm just petting down his back legs, and he's had that done before. I'm just still kind of working on it, making sure he's totally comfortable with me. And I kind of have my little block here. So if he wanted to kind of kick out, then that would be in his way, and I have a bit of a buffer, but he's also loose, so he can run away too. So, and usually he chooses to do that. He's not kicked out, so he much rather just run away. So this looks pretty good. So usually I always start with the front feet, and I'm doing some desensitizing to his tail here because he wants to be tight in his tail and kind of clamp it down a bit. So I'm making sure he's okay with me handling that and just kind of being back there. So I'm just reaching down to his like pastern area and then clicking and feeding. So first I start on the front legs and pet down the front legs, both sides, and then start working on lifting those. And then I start petting down the hind legs on both sides, and then we'll start working on lifting those. So here I'm just kind of petting on him a little bit. I'm desensitizing him to padding a bit, and then we'll just go back to the hind legs and work on that a little bit more. And I'm just going to kind of keep my hand back there a bit more. So I've just kind of had the same thing in the beginning with lifting the front feet, is I'm just going to kind of hold my hand and ask for him to pick that up. And then as soon as he shifts his weight and lifts his foot just gently, or might not even lift his foot, just kind of shifts his weight off of it, I'm going to click and feed. So then I'm going to kind of mix it up and just go ahead and do some petting, and then kind of ask for that weight shift. So I'm just gonna kind of squeeze a little bit on the cap of his hock. So I don't usually do chestnuts on the back feet unless the horse has already been trained that way. I like to just kind of touch on the back of his hock, and I don't really have to squeeze because now they know what to do, and they know that's just a cue. I just touch them on their leg, they pick it up. But then I only touch them in that one certain place. They know to pick it up. Everything else, they'll just keep it there. So that's why I've mixed this up, and I'm just doing some petting in between so he doesn't think every touch on his back leg means pick it up. So that looked pretty good. And I also did the other side, but it's the same thing. So then this is the next day. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I should have clicked earlier before he moved his hindquarters. So again, I'm doing the same thing that I shouldn't have done the day before. So I needed to go back a bit, click for that good solid behavior, and then build on it. And I was just trying to get more seconds than I should have. That was better. But then the thing I found with me picking up his feet is that I was clicking for like slightly better. So I was like anthropomorphizing, and let me hold on one second because this is important too. I'm just barely touching his chest, and I'm just gonna kind of act as like the fence or a wall and just kind of press, but I'm not gonna follow him. I'm just gonna kind of hold there and then wait for him to get off of it. So I'm just gonna wait. I'm trying to use my hand for him to follow the target, but he was not having it. So there he just stepped back and completely released. So he worked on a bit of back up there, so it's pretty good. So go back to picking up his foot. So he wants to back up a little bit, which I did click earlier, so that is why. And he wants to swing his knee around a little bit, so I should have clicked now. That was better. So back to what I was saying before is I'm anthropomorphizing. So I'm like, oh, well, that was slightly better, even though it was not the behavior I want. And I should not have clicked any of those behaviors because he's either backing or he's swinging his leg around or he's doing something I don't want. I should click here. And he's standing solid. He's being good. And now he's already past that. He's moving his head around and he's trying to lean backwards. And I shouldn't have clicked any of these. So that's just something to think about especially when you're doing feet, but that can be with any part of the training. Like, they could be moving and doing something you don't want, and you're just like, oh, well, it's close. Yeah, don't do that. You want to wait and go backwards until they can do it the way you want and click and reward that, because that's what they're going to offer again. So he's just going to keep telling me, like, okay, well, in my mind, I'm saying, okay, this is close, but for him, he's like, oh, you want me to stand still for 5 seconds and then start shaking and moving around after that, because that's what I'm rewarding. So just kind of be aware of that. So I should be clicking now, any point in time. That was actually not too bad. There's still a bit more resistance than I would like. And this is honestly my first time teaching a horse to, well, actually, I think this is the second time I've been teaching a horse to pick up their feet with clicker training. So like I've said before, the Mustangs are an experiment. I do like it, but I was still working on the application of it, and I feel like I'm much better now. But he's doing good here. I'm starting to touch his hoof and get him prepped for actually picking his foot up. So that was actually quite nice. And so for that, I just start by, once the horse can hold their foot up for about 10 seconds, then I start just like, I'll hold the foot up for a minute, and then I will just kind of touch the underside of his foot, and I'll click for that, and then I'll touch and I'll tap twice, I'll click for that, and then I just keep going, and then I can do like 10 taps, and then I start using the hoof pick, and I will just pick once, click, and then I'll just build that up just like I've done everything else. So you can see a little bit from this angle how I'm desensitizing on his back legs, and he seems totally fine with that. He doesn't seem to really have a problem with that. He doesn't look super tense or anything. Yeah, that looks good. And then I'm just asking, and he just barely lifted up off the ground, so that was nice. I'd like him to do it a little bit slower. So what I'm doing here is just kind of holding on his hock, and then I want that. So what I want is like a lift, but I want the back of his hoof to lift, and I'd like him to rest it on his toe. I don't want a whole foot lift, because what can happen is the horse just pulls his foot up really fast, and I don't want that. So there, that was perfect. What I just clicked there is where he just kind of lifted up, but his toe didn't come off the ground, because you want to desensitize to your touch. I'm just going to do the same thing on the other side. So you want to desensitize to your touch, then you want the horse to take the weight off the foot, and then for the hind legs, you want them to just rest the toe and then pick the foot up. So you want those separate tasks, because you don't want the hind foot to just pick up real fast and kick out. That's not what you want to reward. So just keep that in mind, because when you have that toe rest, you have that intermediate step, then they know that they're just kind of going into resting and then lifting versus just like pulling up off the ground really fast. So that's really helpful. So I feel like he's a bit better on this side. He's a little slow to pick up because he has a little bit of a context shift. He's like, oh, I'm so used to doing that one foot. But see, I should have clicked earlier again with this one. So I should not have clicked at all, because he was moving his knee back and forth. So I'm just kind of doing the same thing here. I'm like, oh, well, he was close. Like, no, I shouldn't have clicked any of that. It should have been earlier before he started moving. But it's a good thing to see, and now I'm definitely aware of it, and then everybody won't make the same mistake that I did. So yeah, he's a little slower to pick it up on this side. He's just kind of used to the other side. So what I also should have done was started picking up this right side first and then the left side, just to kind of mix it up. So he's already swinging. So there, I should have clicked there at any point in this time. That was actually not bad. He's actually doing pretty good, but I still should have clicked a bit earlier and built it back up again if he's starting to swing his leg around. I definitely don't want to just kind of hold on, and I feel like some of my negative reinforcement and some natural horsemanship training gets stuck in my brain, and I'm like, oh no, I'm just going to hold and wait until he stops fighting it, but I shouldn't have done that. So it can be hard to transition, but I think that's really the root cause of that, is that was just so ingrained that I'm just like, oh no, I'm just gonna wait until they're done with it. And in some situations that could be a good thing, and you can kind of work on them with pressure and release of pressure, but for this scenario it's not going to help anything. So I should click here. This looks really nice before he starts swinging his knee around. That's not too bad. I still would have liked to click a little earlier, but better than the other side, so we'll take it. So, and then when he's being extra good, I'm giving him a little bit of a jackpot. So he didn't move his knee there, so I gave him like 3 handfuls of treats, and right now he's just having alfalfa pellets. So I do alfalfa pellets or cubes or alfalfa Timothy mix, cubes or pellets. So it kind of depends on the horse. Right now I'm using more cubes than anything, and just breaking them up in small pieces. Just because I feel like they can get it better, like from my hand to their mouth, and they're not looking for all the little pieces, and I'm not dropping it. So I was dropping like a few pieces every time and kind of just wasting it. So I feel like they're more relaxed with it because they're not looking for the rest of it. They're kind of focusing more on you than the food. So that was just what I found with these horses that I have right now. But and that looks really good. His hind feet desensitizing looks nice. And just wait for him there. He just kind of lifts his weight off of it. So he's doing really good on those hind feet. He's making some progress. So whenever I back up, I'm just kind of giving him a second to just chew and relax. And then I reapproach again. So I petted a few times that time. That looked really good. So he gets a couple of pieces here. That was really nice. I would really like that head and neck to stay horizontal and level before I go back there. That looked really good. I'd like a little bit less lift and more like just relax on the toe, but I'm just kind of asking for that weight to come off. So, and that's what he's giving me. So we'll go with that for now. For one that will really pull up their foot really high, like I would just kind of wait and pet until they relax down a bit and put the toe on the ground and then click that. So if your horse is just a bit like eager or a little bit worried, then I would just kind of pet the leg and wait till it goes back to the ground and then click him for that toe. Yeah, that looked really nice. He just kind of picked it up but rested his toe on the ground, so that looked really good. So he gets a nice little jackpot for that. That was perfect. And then I just kind of retreat, let him hang out and chew, and then I get to reapproach too. So I get to do a little bit of two things at once because I get to approach his hindquarters and work on the desensitizing the legs. So that looked really nice. So I'm just going to kind of give him a little jackpot, and then I just put it on this stool so he could eat off something else versus my hand and just mix it up a little bit, but he was quite good.